man, it's fantastic the way that they have wrapped this up. We've said that there's been perfect episodes this season. Dare I say this was a perfect season, period, of Star Wars television. Agree or disagree in the comments below.
Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan. Krypton to Alderaan.
Welcome, everyone, to Krypton to Alderaan. I'm Joey, your Star Wars lover, and with me is Royce Goodlooks, your Star Wars song guy.
Hello, Joey. Hello, podcast.
Hello, and we're the podcast that analyzes nerdy pop culture, but it's mostly Star Wars. And this episode, we are talking about Skeleton Crew, Episode 8, the season finale. The real good guys. Who are the real good guys anyway, when you think about it?
You and me.
That's right, listeners, and don't forget it. Speaking of, real quick, hit that subscribe button if you haven't already. And hey, if you want to give us a test drive, if you want to wait and see if you like us, that's fine. That's okay. Just make sure you hit the subscribe button before you leave. Okay, enough of that. Let's punch it. Oh, I'm going to miss that if we don't keep it up. Season finale of Skeleton Crew. Wasn't it great? Don't you think it was really good?
Dude, I was so excited to go into the finale episode. There's nothing I can say that we haven't already said about this show. It was just so freaking fun. It was moving. It was heartfelt. I even felt bad for Jod, who we've been like, he's a jerk. He's betraying everybody. You know, he almost kind of gets betrayed in a way in this episode. And you can see how that kind of breaks his heart, or at least that's how I sort of read it. But man, it was good. It was so solid. They even did the classic. There's the air battle, there's the ground battle, and the two are trying to make the other succeed. They stuck the landing, and they fit it all within 40 minutes somehow.
I was going to ask about the timing because you said we can reasonably expect a 38-minute season finale, so I was curious how that landed.
Technically, it was above the average time for this season, which I think was 39 minutes, but since we're talking about it, this was the shortest Star Wars live-action show of all time, excluding Obi-Wan. That was only 6 episodes. But of the 8-episode seasons, this was the shortest, second to The Acolyte and Mandalorian Season 1. But short and sweet.
Yes. Maybe best bang for your buck in terms of that, from my opinion. Like maybe the shortest, but the degree to which I enjoyed, I mean, I've enjoyed a lot of the other shows as well, but for a condensed version, that might skew my average a little bit because I also thought the finale was great. I was kind of on the edge of my seat the entire time. It was super exciting. The music made it super exciting. I really love that pirate theme. But even when they're going through the streets, like on the hover bikes, and they're trying to get to the ship and KB's taking off and all that stuff, it was just super, super exciting. And Vane's trying to shoot them down. I was super worried about Neil for a second. Like, it kept me on the edge of my seat. It also kept a smile on my face, like we said in the first couple of episodes. Like when Wim's dad makes the jump on the hover bike and then he's like super excited about it. He's like, did you see that? And Wim's like, Dad, we gotta go. Just so fun, so amazing to continue to see the kids just being super competent. They've had this adventure. Now they're back. They know they have to save their home and they're just really, really good at it. They're just really good. They knew exactly what they have to do. They work together to do it. I love like rugged Fern just angry at Jod and ratting him out to the supervisor, all this stuff. So heartfelt, like you were saying. So exciting. Yeah, maybe I have one or two gripes, but just a really, really great finale.
Yeah, dude, the only thing I was griping about this season was the runtime, but it was so good that it wasn't an issue. It wasn't like, oh crap, like it's short and it also stinks. It was short and awesome. Dude, I love that you're talking about the kids are still in charge. The kids are heroes, right? And the parents suck. They suck at their job. You're like, throw the switch already, you know, or just listen to your kids already when your kids are saying, hey, listen to me, mom. Listen to me, dad. I love that Wim's father was like, oh, the supervisor will take care of that. And Wim's telling him, no, we're the only ones that know. We're the only ones that can do it. Not everyone may have warmed up to Wim throughout this season, but the courage that he has there when he's saying, we're the only ones that can do this. And I know you're a Neil stan, for Neil to get behind the turbo laser, like, I'm the only one that could shoot down the pirates right now. Our planet is full of a bunch of just drones. We're the only ones in control. I love the way that this series empowered the kids and the way that the kids sort of taught the lessons that they learned on their journey back to their parents. And this was kind of cool. Although, like, KB's parents and Neil's parents don't really tie in. It's kind of funny. We had like great arcs for all four of the kids, but not really for KB's family or Neil's family. They just kind of seem like they didn't have lessons to learn, I guess.
They're already perfect.
Yeah. I love Neil's taking a bubble bath while the pirates are invading. Like, that's also perfect.
It's really good because moments like that, like, drive home that they are kids. I think it's easy, especially for us, maybe the older generation of Star Wars fans watching this, as the audience, to get wrapped up in the story. And we know Star Wars and it's like, going out and fighting in the galaxy, but constant reminder, like, the kid's taking a bubble bath. He is a kid. And they are kids. And it's one of the greatest tropes of shows or movies like this, where the kids are not taken seriously by the parents. And in the background, they're secretly like saving the world. And their parents are like, what are you talking about? Come on, you're in the basement playing Dungeons and Dragons or whatever. And they're actually out traveling to and from the Upside Down.
You guys can fly the ship?
Right, exactly. And then she like does it on her own with the help of SM-33. But her parents believe in her. She said that, when the ship's falling down, her moms are like, you can do anything, KB, right? So
I love that.
We got some really wholesome, heartfelt moments. Wim's dad and Fern's mom maybe not taking their kids super seriously.
Or too seriously.
Right. Or being too serious, but learning that lesson in the end, especially with Fern's mom when the time that they spend with Jod up in the supervisor's office. Yeah, I really love that kind of storyline or trope. We saw the same thing in The Bad Batch, right? We saw the characters of The Bad Batch. This is why I also like this show, because it is the closest that live action has come to the animated Star Wars, and I love the animated Star Wars. But we see it in The Bad Batch, and the characters progress to taking Omega seriously. One of Clone Force 99, in one of the first episodes of The Bad Batch, says kids exaggerate.
No, we don't. You heard
When they're talking to Omega about Hera and Hera asking for their help, but they had just met. And then we obviously see the trajectory of their relationship grow and they take her seriously. And then she becomes a pilot and goes to fight in the rebellion. And for Wim being the hero in this, again, without realizing that he's the hero, we got to see his journey, which was great because it's what I wanted to and expected to see. And he becomes the hero without any selfishness involved. Like in the beginning of the show, he's like, I want to help people. I want to be a Jedi. It felt more like because he was idolizing the Jedi and wanted the accolade, whatever. It wasn't maybe for the most altruistic reasons, but in this episode, he's going all out to save his home and to save his friends. Because of his journey that we saw and him like saving KB's life without knowing that that's what he was doing, he's become this character today and gazes out at the X-Wings beyond at the end. The character development, the way that these kids have progressed through the season, made that aspect of the finale extremely satisfying for me.
Yeah, I love when Star Wars is wholesome. Every live action show has had its own kind of genre, its own sort of lane, its own sort of vibe that it's followed, its own style guide for how it's approaching Star Wars. But I think this wholesome approach where like we can teach some basic levels of just how to be a good person should not be lost in any of storytelling. And it works incredibly well with that Star Wars guys over top of it. Wholesome Star Wars, I'm here for it, animated or not. Although I've been rewatching some Rebels lately, and I'm with you, Joey. It's like, this is my Star Wars, man.
That's right.
You just cannot go wrong. If you're not watching the animated stuff, you're missing out. End of discussion there.
I've been saying it for years. We can probably make a supercut of me saying that on this very podcast. And boy, I sure would like to have that conversation another day.
Well, so for all of this, talk about what we loved about the episode. The Jod redemption arc was something that's been in the air. Do we love Jod? Do we not love Jod? That was our conversation last week. Someone pointed out in the comments, if you don't know if you love or you hate the character, you love the character, something to that effect. And yeah, I think you're right. Jod is a great character. The scene when he's watching the ship blow up and the orchestration there, Hey, I got to hand it to you, Mick. You're walking in your father's footsteps, doing a great job. The music there is really well done, really moving, and it makes you think, man, I feel bad for you, Jod. So what did you think about Jod's arc, redemption or not?
Oh my goodness. I have so much to say about this. I was on the I hate Jod train and still kind of am. I'm not going to say in my mind,
Yeah.
it wasn't a redemption arc
He's a bad
of
guy.
any
Come
kind.
on.
He's a bad guy. I maintain what I said last week. He's just like a bad guy. But another beautiful thing this show has done, which again, the animated shows have done for me, is make me feel for a character that I don't necessarily want to feel for. I don't want to feel for the bad guy, right? I mean, I guess that's inherently Star Wars. Return of the Jedi, Vader takes off his mask and I tear up every time, no matter how many times I see that. Maybe that's just embedded in Star Wars, but I did not want to feel for Jod, especially after everything that happens in this episode. And he's justifying his actions and he's saying he didn't want anyone to get hurt, which saying he didn't want things to go this way, he didn't want anyone to get hurt is fine. That doesn't necessarily make him a good guy. He still wants them. He doesn't want them to get hurt because he wants them to work for him, making him money. That's not a good guy thing. But they really made me feel for him with just a little bit of a story about the Jedi that found him and that music and scene where he's watching the ship go down. He did not do anything to make me feel for him, but a little bit of context made me feel for him. Just a little bit, just a little tinge of it right at the end, which I think is an incredible thing to do. If you listen to our episodes of season 1 of The Bad Batch and probably a lot of season 2, I did not want Crosshair to have a redemption. I was like, Crosshair is a bad guy. He's been trying to kill them for like 20 episodes. And then at the end of the 3rd season, spoiler alert, it's one of the greatest redemption arcs ever that I've ever seen, ever. Not just Star Wars.
So what you're saying is we need 2 more seasons of the Skeleton Crew.
Exactly. That is exactly what I'm saying. I'm saying there is still room for it. Bad Batch taught me a lot. And I think that little tinge at the end of him watching the ship and all the stuff that happens leading up to that scene at the very end really made me reflect back on how I felt about Crosshair, maybe at the end of the 1st season of The Bad Batch going into season 2. So, hey, subvert my expectations. Bring this guy back from the brink. Have the kids teach him a lesson about the darkness in the galaxy. Fern says to her mom, no matter how dark things got, there were good people too. Jod then says the exact opposite. That's what the galaxy is, darkness with pinpricks of light. They're saying the same thing, but from opposite sides. And if the kids in potential future seasons of the show, if the kids or somebody can bring Jod back to seeing things the way that Fern sees them and the way that we as the audience see it from Star Wars, we know that those pinpricks of light, even though that is true, that's what the heroes of Star Wars see as hope. If they can bring him back to that side, that's great. This is a lot of speculation. I give it more credit than I would have otherwise because of that one moment that made me reflect back on how I felt about Crosshair.
Yeah. The acting and the direction and the scoring is a perfect trifecta to just draw you into the character. And if he was just going to be full on evil, you'd buy into it. If he gets redeemed, you'll buy into it too. And yeah, if we saw more of him, I guess, I don't know, it could go either way because it's just a fun character. Like that's the beauty of it, and you can keep us guessing, do Jim and Pam get married? You just keep people on the hook, until the day you finally make a decision on it. I do love, though, he's giving that speech where you're saying, I want you to work for me. It's a beautiful planet. I don't want to destroy it because the only thing that matters is cold, hard. And he said this a couple of times, which is great that they've done a great job having these callback moments with lots of different characters. But here specifically with Jod, that's the moment where Wynn's dad punches him, and he gets him. He's distracted by his greed and his selfishness in that moment. And that is his undoing, which again, that's how you do it.
Good.
Very satisfying that yes, Jod was not redeemed in this series finale. He leaned into his selfish desires and it didn't pay off. And the parents are going to save their kids at the end, or they're going to find KB in the crashed ship, and they're running past all of the credits on the ground. They don't care that there's infinite treasure. They make the money. They don't even care. They care about their family. and they're all reunited in the tower just before then. And Wim's saying, come with us, Jod. There's a moment where Wim's like, all can be forgiven. And Jod doesn't go with him, and he's all there alone. And it's like you're saying, this juxtaposition, it's just great, man. I also would be just fine. This could just be one season. We could just live in headcanon land, and that would be just as satisfying, because who knows what Jod is thinking in that moment. Everyone's like, he's smiling at the end. I'm like, I don't see a smile. I think he's...
Oh, I saw a smirk.
But we could argue it, though. I think that's the brilliance of that scene and the acting. We'd be lucky if we got more. Otherwise, we can always speculate.
Yep, I agree. Obviously, it sounds like you found the ending satisfying.
Well, it's funny. Now you're reminding me. I do have gripes. Yes, it was so good. It was very well done. But I do want to know what happens to the planet now. The power just magically came on. Do we repair the supervisor? What does the New Republic think about this? It's the old Republic. They haven't talked to anybody for, I don't know, 20, 30, 40 years, whatever it's been. That's a lot of looming questions. So I'm glad we didn't just see like the X-Wings blow up the ship and then jump back to hyperspace. We saw the Corvette come in. Wim's looking up to it. It alludes to like some kind of collaboration there. And I was kind of hoping for not a post-credits, but just that epilogue scene. You know, like I said, I've been watching Rebels lately, and they do the very like, they hit you over the head with the epilogue at the end of that. Hera fought in the Battle of Endor, and so did Rex. It's a little corny, but they exercised a lot of restraint by not doing something silly at the end, like Yoda shows up or something, you know,
right.
Which might excite some people. It might not excite some people. So well-exercised restraint. Yoda's dead at that point. You're right. Okay. I'm fully fact-checked. But okay, end of rant being, I was really satisfied with the way they wrote it. But yeah, you do still wonder, where do they go from there? If that's the setup for future seasons, I guess there could be a lot to explore, but that could go a lot of different directions.
Oh, there is so much more to explore. The whole ending of this show made me think of Bad Batch, and I think it was a perfect place to end with Wim looking out at the X-Wings.
Rian Johnson did it.
He's again looking to his heroes. He's figuring out what he wants to do. Fern is like, well, you don't have to take assessment, and he looks out at the X-Wings. That's a perfect place to end. But it also made me think that if we get future seasons of the show and the kids continue to age up, we could also have the epilogue from the Bad Batch season 3, where Wim goes off to fight the First Order. He has a conversation with his dad as he's leaving, like Omega does with Hunter at the end of the Bad Batch. It would be amazing to see things go that way. I want more. I would say that I'm satisfied in terms of, yes, it was great. I loved it. We've said that. For me, it wasn't necessarily complete. That's not a negative. I'm not saying that as a bad thing, but it wasn't necessarily a cliffhanger, but it wasn't necessarily a neat little bow.
They didn't zoom in on the characters at the end and
right, with a little vignette.
Yeah.
Wim and his dad go and live on their farm out in the country. And it's funny that we bring up The Mandalorian season 3, because in terms of where this could go, why I think I feel like it's a little not satisfying is because I know that the New Republic is not that great. Like, we saw some flaws in the New Republic in Mando season 3, and we saw characters even say, New Republic, Empire, who can keep track? It's all the same, right? The high and mighty and rich on Coruscant don't really care. So being invaded, At-Aten being invaded by the New Republic, and the New Republic taking their money versus being invaded by pirates, like the pirates are obviously more violent, but the outcome might not be that different other than their lives are not at stake. I'm just saying that the New Republic is not all that great, and I'm just a little sad. I'm actually more than a little sad that the barrier's down and now At-Aten is open to the rest of the galaxy, because we know that the New Republic is not awesome, and because we know that a little bit down the line is the First Order. Now all of this money, or the ability to make this money, can go to them and fund Starkiller Base and fund cloning Palpatine and all of these other things that we're getting into with the Imperial Remnant storyline. So it's just scary. It's not disappointing. Again, it's not a negative. It's just I'm bummed for these people. I'm bummed for the planet that it's not a secret. Turn that barrier back on, get it up and running, and don't let anyone in again. That's what I want.
Yeah, that's what I'm saying. This is great headcanon to explore. But this is also the same in Bad Batch, Joey, with Pabu. Like, Pabu was just safe all those years. You know, it's same thing and no barrier there.
I would be very surprised if I did not say the same thing about Pabu and being super disappointed when the Empire found it. Now, we don't know if the Empire, if that data gets erased from the archive or whatever about Pabu. But I remember being very disappointed. It's the same exact thing. You're right. Again, this show has come the closest to the animated show. It makes me feel just as excited, almost just as excited as the animated shows do. I remember being very disappointed that they found Pabu because I want these safe havens to exist. I want the protection from the Empire. I also want the protection from the New Republic and the First Order. There have to be these gems of places out in the galaxy where people are safe, regardless of how bad the supervisor was and obedience is necessary for whatever. They were safe for a long, long time from everything else that was going on in the galaxy. So it's just sad that happened, and I didn't want it to happen that way. There was a moment where I thought the pirates were going to win. There was a moment where I thought they were going to Empire Strikes Back this, and the pirates will win, and season 2 is going to be the kids out in the galaxy trying to convince people that A, they're from Aten, and B, they need help. And people being like, Aten's not real, and the New Republic being like, what are you kids doing? Like, no one taking them seriously out in the galaxy. For a minute, I really thought that was what was going to happen. And we would get a season of the pirates running at Aten.
Yeah, that could have been cool if the pirates got away, but the people of Aten were generally safe, if not like destroyed a little bit, that they were like, well, now we've got to like protect ourselves and rebuild and go after the pirates. That could have been interesting. I really wasn't thinking too much about Vane and Gunter and Steve Urkel, and I wasn't worrying so much about them. I was really more thinking about like just Jod and the kids and their relationship. And I was maybe not surprised, but I guess I just didn't like Jod so much these last couple episodes. I was like, take the lightsaber whim and just go ham. I wanted to see him like Kylo Ren, like break a couple of things because maybe he wasn't like good with it, that he'd break a couple computers there, sparks would be flying, and maybe he'd like, maybe not, kill Jod, but he could at least, people lose limbs in Star Wars all the time. He could have winged him in the shoulder, taken off a hand, or what I yelled at the screen actually was like stab him in the back. Like that would be the writing there if it was maybe a more mature storytelling, but that wouldn't really, like you were saying before we started recording today, you're like, Neil shouldn't be the fighter. Like, Wim also wouldn't be the backstabbing mutineer, but that would also be really interesting storytelling as well. He looked up to Jod as his hero, who he thought was his hero, who stabbed him in the back, but then at the end, that's what Wim ends up doing, which he sort of just does in a way, in a more good guy way. The real good guys, it's fantastic the way that they have wrapped this up. I don't know, maybe on a rewatch, I'll have a different opinion. My enjoyment is been sustained from start to finish. Dare I say, we've said that there's been perfect episodes this season. Dare I say this was a perfect season, period, of Star Wars television. Agree or disagree in the comments below. What do you think, Joey?
Are we including animation in this?
Yeah, why not? Why not?
Review? Yeah, it's definitely up there for me. We definitely should have a more thought out ranking, although it changes all the time for me. But it's definitely up there. I think you're right. I think it's been the most consistent. I know I'm going to get hate for this, and I don't really care, but I really enjoyed The Acolyte, and that was pretty solid for me throughout. And I have lots of reasons, and I think I can defend myself there. But this is up there as far as me consistently enjoying it episode to episode. The episodes were short, but I smiled a lot. I had a good time. The animation vibes kept it elevated for me. It was just, it was super fun, super heartfelt. It ticked a lot of boxes, not just Star Wars boxes. We haven't said our catchphrase in a while.
Yes, but this is it, Joey. The Skeleton Crew didn't really challenge us in the same ways that something like The Acolyte challenged us. Or even Mandalorian Season 3, when we spend an episode on Coruscant talking about politics and not Mandalorians. You are going to have Mandalorians in your Mandalorian show, are you not? So, but Skeleton Crew didn't make those mistakes. It didn't take those risks to say we're going to spend an episode talking about the mint and making the money and we'll do a flashback to the old Republic and the old emissary, or, some kind of crazy idea that might have been amazing if executed well. Skeleton Crew is much more safe. They played it much more safe than some of the other Star Wars shows did. Still paid off.
Yeah, there's room for all of this stuff. And just because they played it safe, which I agree with you, I think it's classic Star Wars in a nutshell, which is why I can compare it to a lot of other Star Wars. And it worked. Obviously there was new stuff and we got new lore and we got Adden and we got the Gems of the Old Republic, which is great. But it's definitely classic Star Wars and they definitely played it safe. That doesn't make it bad. It was still great. And that doesn't mean that shows that don't play it safe are bad. They can still be great.
Well, dude, here's the funny thing. It wasn't big and bold, but what they did very well. I think there's still something to that. It provided other opportunities for the show to be great in other ways than being inventive.
Right. And because of that, I think I can say for you and me, because of that, we might have forgiven maybe some of the little inconsistencies in the show.
We don't have to rewatch it to fall in love with it.
Right, exactly. We will rewatch it, but we watched it and we loved it.
Sometimes for me, it's the rewatching that really sells me on it, though, or our conversations where you're like, I wasn't thinking of that scene or that character in that way. And now I am. And it means something more to me now than my initial reaction. And that is what Skeleton Crew was able to do well, is it was immediately satisfying.
Yes. And I also think this is a little maybe more behind the scenes thing here. I think this is the first season of a Star Wars show where we haven't had an episode of me trying to convince you to like the episode or vice versa.
Yeah.
We were like, again, because this was very Star Wars and because it's very us and it's what we love about Star Wars, we were on the same page a lot of the time. Probably the only thing we strayed away from each other a little bit was Jod, maybe. So let us know, listeners, if you and your friends enjoyed it or if you fought with your friends about some episodes.
Yeah, especially now that we've come to the end of the seasons. Yeah, listeners, we would love to know what you thought about all of the character arcs coming to a close this season. We'd love to know how you felt about the finale, the possibility of future seasons. So let's keep the conversation going down in the comments. We'd love to hear from you, and make sure to subscribe and tune in next time for more nerdy pop culture, but mostly Star Wars. Thanks for listening to the podcast today. I've been Royce.
I've been Neil, because Neil's the best character in the whole show.
And we've been Krypton
to Atten. Kids say, I remember no Atten.
I want to fit in a joke about, and stay tuned for our Season 4 Rebels review coming next week.
Stay tuned to hear me talk more about the Bad Batch.